All right, welcome back to another episode of Usapang Musiko Season 2. And yeah, it's a bit late today. Sorry about that. I had a few meetings that I needed to finish. But yeah, we're here now. And for today's episode, we are going to talk about sight reading. Now, basically, the practical side of sight reading. Do you really need to be able to read? And how do you make sure that you can actually read music, no, and help with your playing? Okay. So first things first, what is sight reading? No, we can define it as you being able to read at will and be able to translate that either through singing or your instrument, being able to play that on your instrument. No, because you see, we always talk about that music has two sides. There's the theoretical side and there's the applied side. And in theory, technically, yes, you have to understand, read each note properly. Timing is also important, no? But on the practical or application side of things, of course, it's a key skill that you need to learn. Okay, it's not a talent that only certain people possess. No, it's something that is fairly skill based. No, being able to sight read or read music at will at any point in time is a skill that you can learn. No, in and you can master. No, when I was studying in the university, we had um, classes. No, where we are singing, sight singing, we call it, or solfege. That we are taught how to read and actually sing those notes, no, because singing is one of the easiest way to translate notes from paper to music, no, without the use of any instruments, of course. And yeah, it's an important skill. I think in my curriculum back then, um it took us around, correct me if I'm wrong, uh 6 semesters. So that's like around 3 years on that basic. It's technically a basic thing or a prerequisite for every subject that you have to take. Those sight singing classes, no? So that it helps you out in understanding how to read notes and not just the face value of the notes. What do I mean by the face value? Like if you have written it in the G clef, no, it's not the only clef that you can read it in. You can change clefs, you can change, you can transpose, change keys, and still be able to maximize the notes that you are reading and use it at will. No, being able to translate that uh, notes or pictures or figures into music, no, something that we can hear, no. There's this sort of mantra or saying that as a musician you should have hearing eyes and seeing ears, no. is it just simply means that whatever you see on paper you can hear it in your head, or you can actually literally sing it out, no? And whatever you can hear, you can write it down. No, it's different from being a perfect pitch or whatever you might call that. No, because it's it can be trained. Yeah, it's been proven that there are trainings for you to really sharpen your ears to be perfect pitched, but it's quite hard. It's difficult. Sometimes it's really innate. It's a talent. Most, let's say 60-70% of perfect pitch people are born with it or they already have it, and just a few percent of that can really develop the same accuracy that they have. But for sights reading, it's a skill, 100% pure skill. How do I say it? Because let's compare sight reading music with reading language. For example, if you grew up watching English shows as a kid, you would be fluent in speaking the English language, no? And if they speak that language in your household, of course you'll be fluent with it. Now, it's the same thing. there's training involved, right? Because you're being conditioned as you grow older that you speak this language. And then when you start to read, you associate that language with the things that you read. No? That's why you became good at spelling English words because you've been using them. No, you're now more aware. And as you read, you don't read per letter, right? You read words, and as you read those words, you come up with ideas that create sentences. And as you create sentences, you can connect these sentences to create paragraphs. It's the same thing with music, no? You shouldn't be reading notes one by one. It's more of reading a measure, no? And then that measure turns into a whole phrase, and that phrase turns into a lot of phrases turns into one section of a piece, and those sections come together to create one whole piece. You see the analogy in how reading music is like reading in language. It's basically the same thing, no? You have to comprehend. Yeah. There's still a lot of comprehension that needs to go on. It's not I think why it becomes hard for people is that they think that you should read one note one by one like that, no? And yes, if you're starting out, of course that's how you will be doing it. It's the same thing when you were young, no? They taught you how to write letters, how those letters sound, and then you try to write words, spell down words, and then the same thing. You connect all those notes to create a measure, no? And then you create sentences, simple sentences for, and then more complicated sentences. It's the same thing, no? With music. And if you actually try, I think it's one of the best ways to actually speed up your sight reading, no? I mean, let's talk about practicality here, no? Because there is a big difference between knowing the note, the name of the note, and playing the note. Okay? So which one is more important to you will depend on how you use your music. If you are someone who likes to write music, of course you have to know the notes. But if you are a musician who plays the music, you have to know how to play them properly. And that I think is the key. It's not about just identifying, it's about comprehension. Comprehending what is happening. Are the notes going up? How will I play it if it's going up? It's not just, oh, I play this one and then I'll play the other one. Because, of course, intonation, for example, comes into play, especially for string players, diba? Our intonation is based on the note that we came from. It's always relative to where you came from. That's why it's important that you comprehend or understand where your notes, the notes that you are reading, are coming from. No? And you can develop sight reading skills by singing. No? It might seem awkward to some, but if you have not sang in your life and you're playing an instrument, it's not gonna be easy for you. No? Uh, there is a saying in music that if you can't sing it, you can't play it. No, a lot of people know this. That of course, music technically, even if you're playing an instrument, you're still singing in your head. It's just a different form of singing. What do I mean? It comes from your brain, not directly through your mouth. You don't sing like that. You're singing with the extension of your body, which is your instrument. And that's the only difference. But the thing is, it's the same principle that is happening. No. So yeah. So for you to develop good sight reading skills, you have to practice it. It is really 100% skill. No? You just really have to work on it. Um, you read as much as you can, comprehend as much as you can. No, but a lot of people were asking me, but I like to listen more. Okay, maybe there's a reason why it's easier for you to listen. No, Like me, for example, when I was young, I didn't like reading notes, but I was fluent in reading notes, but my ears know better, because it's quicker, you know. Our bodies tend to go to which is more efficient, no? Because if you are good with your ears and you like playing by ear, maybe sometimes it's better. Diba? I already did a topic on this. Why? Sometimes I don't have sheet music for certain pieces that I play because it's easier for me to just play by ear, right? But if you really want to be well-rounded as a musician, you should have at least adequate sight reading skills. You don't need to be like super fast sight reader, because it will always translate to what you are doing. No, it doesn't need to be too quick. It just needs to be effective. No, you have to, especially if you're in an orchestra, you have to be able to read. No, whatever is in front of you, you should be able to execute it. No, maybe not in the fastest tempo or not yet in the exact tempo, but be able to identify rhythms, intonation, pitch, timing, all those things. And I think most of the time the problem comes with the rhythm. No. So how do you cure the problems with the rhythm? You use a metronome. No. When you have certain beats that are fairly and clearly audible, it's easier for you to follow along. No, it's easier for you to count the notes, easier for you to get the entrances correctly if there's an audible metronome. No, sometimes because if you're just starting out, you don't have a feel for it. No, there are things you need to feel, and if you are not yet at that level, of course, you need a metronome or at least beat. Beat with your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever beat you're trying to sight read or read. No, that's very very important. And another thing is when you are already sight reading, you don't need to know the names of the notes. That's what I want to focus right now. Is that it's not important that you know that this is do or this is re or this is F sharp or this is G sharp. No, because if you can identify, good. But if you are not sure about it on the string on your instrument, that's the problem. No. To slow you down, because if you will go look and then identify and then sort of try to put it in your hands, that's already a step slow. Versus you looking at it, your hand knows exactly where it goes. That's more efficient. No? So those things are really important in sight reading. It's not just about being able to identify. Of course, it's part of it. No, being well rounded. Of course, in theory, of course, you just need to identify them, and in playing, you need to be able to play them. So you have to find a balance between those two. No, um, what else? For sight reading, also, when you're trying to read, sometimes people get stuck. No? And the ability to move on is important. What do I mean by moving on? Is that if you are following, wait, for example, you're playing with an orchestra and you are sight reading pieces, no? You shouldn't be moving in the same direction as the same speed as your notes. Your mind should be ahead. You should be reading at least 2, 3 measures ahead as you are playing. So you're playing measure 1, but you have already read measure 3, 4, and 5 as you are going through. Why? Because your body needs time to react. You can't be in the moment. That's already too late. There's still reaction times that you need to understand needs to work. So if you're reading per measure, like you're playing measure 1, you're still reading measure 1, you don't know what's going to happen next. That's dangerous. No? So that's how you should be sight reading. You should be reading in advance, at least 2, 3 measures in advance where you are playing, so that you know and you can plan ahead of time where your fingers might go, or how you should be bowing, or how it will evolve, the music that you're playing, how it will flow. Diba? Those things are really important. And yeah, sight singing, no? Very underrated. Not a lot of people sing their notes. I mean, you don't need to belt it out. You just need to be able to hum a tune or carry a tune with you based on notes, you know? Because note reading, no? We have discussed this before, that it's not a lot of musicians, or some musicians don't read notes, but yeah, it's an advantage. So being well-rounded as a musician is an advantage. If you have the opportunity to be able to read music, get and take that opportunity and learn, because it is a valuable skill that you should have at this point in time, no? It's not rocket science, no? It's easy if you treat it right. Huh? Treat it as a language instead of treating it as syntax, you know? Because some people just think of it as a formula. But you're trying to speak. You're trying to, diba they call music the universal language. You're trying to speak a language here. And if you can speak that language, it's gonna be easier for you. Of course, sometimes you really don't need to have those notes, but knowing at the back of your head, no? It's the same reasoning as if you are doing talking like this in a conversation. I don't need to write down. I don't need to know how to write it down because we're speaking. But you already know how to write it down, no? There's like, it's different from conversations and it's different from writing, no? Some languages are like that. The same thing with music, no? Sometimes things that are not written are being played, but it's fine, no? That's why it's a very very close uh correlation between music and language. It's almost exactly the same thing in writing, in application, and in theory, no? It's really really close. So if you want to speed up your sight reading, you should be reading exactly the notes that you want and understand how it works. Yeah. So I could suggest books maybe, but yeah, if you don't have source material, just grab the nearest score with you and just play along. If you have a whole etude book that you haven't seen yet, try to read through it. If you have an old Suzuki book with you, try to play those things, you know? It's not about a progressive method book, eh, because you can use literally anything as a guide, no? Any book will work as long as it's within the bounds of your um instrument. Of course, if you are going to learn cello, you should be reading cello pieces, no? Don't read flute pieces because it's gonna be hard for you to reach those notes. It's a different voice, no? So if you're a violinist, find violin pieces. It doesn't need to be hard. It can be as easy as you want, as long as you can read it properly. Well, how do we measure proper music reading or sight reading? Is your rhythms are correct. Pitch, yeah, pitch should be good. At least you understand if it's sharp or flat, you know. And timing. Yeah, I'm differentiating timing with rhythms, because timing is how do you play along with it, no? Because sometimes you might have correct rhythm, but it's a different timing, you know. Those things are quite different. But yeah, so you have to consider those things. Of course, a lot more things to consider are your musicianship and how well you can play it, no? That's how, or how you interpret the music. But of course, if you're sight reading, that doesn't matter as much, as long as you're hitting the notes correctly and properly. Yeah. I hope this podcast episode has helped you, if you are struggling with sight reading, no, just my best advice that I can give you is sing the notes that you already know, yeah, and be familiar, and just keep on reading, because it's really a skill you have to develop. It's not something that can be done overnight. The process of it is not as easy as it looks, but it gets better as long as you keep on practicing and trying it out. All right. So I'll end this episode of Usapang Musiko Season 2. I hope you learned something new. Check me out on Sessions Live. I haven't scheduled in a while, but yeah, I'll be back. And then check out my course on Udemy. It's still available. My album on Spotify just hit 25,000 streams. Yeah, thank you for that. And of course, Anchor for our podcast. And I will see you on the next one. This has been Ryan Monakil for Usapang Musiko Season 2.